So the topic is deepening the joy of living. And I've been super busy for the last couple of months. And so I've decided I'm running this series so that I can remind myself of the joy of living and deepen my own joy of living. I have all the practices. And, one of the first things is, do we take time to slow down and, notice the magnificence of existence? That's always really the first, very, very first question of all. And I want to just mention that there are three types of aspiration in life. One type of aspiration in life is, tangible goals, smart objectives, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time-bound. And that's the normal thing that people do and businesses do in terms of goal setting. And then there's becoming more of who you are, which life calling in my work is a part of that system, is a part of that way of thinking about things. Life calling is about fulfilling your potential throughout your life until you've achieved your potential on the last day of your life. And then being is the third category, which is about really enjoying the moment as it is, this moment, without having to get anywhere, without having to achieve anything, without having to do anything. And so that's, those three distinctions are super important, because a lot of life is about achieving things. The modern world is about achieving things. The industrial, technological world is about, a lot of it is about achieving things. And then becoming is, let me become more and more of who I truly am. And you can set some measurables, you can set some smart objectives around becoming, but really it's more about a sort of a continuing process of blossoming. And then the third category is really different. I really want to emphasize this, that what happened with mindfulness was that they took something that was deeply spiritual, meditation and the non-dual, and they turned it into something psychological. And then psychologists, doctors, scientists, business people, HR people could use it. So it's a very, very, very sort of clever, it's more than a trick, a very, very clever thing to do. But the danger with that is that we lose the distinction about what it's truly about. So mindfulness does, it's proven to reduce mild depression better than antidepressants. It's proven that if you teach your managers mindfulness, they will get better feedback from staff in staff surveys. There's evidence for all of those sorts of things. But mindfulness is also a portal into an entirely different world, into a really different landscape. So that's the sort of the peak of mindfulness, the high point of mindfulness is when you've settled yourself down so much that you can watch the thoughts arise, but you don't identify with them. You watch the experiences of the world arise, but you don't identify with those experiences. And you're just watching everything arise, and you're paying more attention to the field in which they arise, which is awareness itself, than you are to the things that are arising in awareness. And there can become a point where even for just a short amount of time, you're just watching it all arise. There's no past and there's no future. And there's no internal dialogue, or at least you're not identified with the internal dialogue. And when there's no internal dialogue, when there's no past and future, because you're just in the present moment, something else opens up that I've only glimpsed. I just need to say that I've only glimpsed it. But that's a world which is a world beyond the narrative of our lives, the story of our lives. And so if you think about the story of your life, there's all the good story of your life. And then there's your anxious stories, your neurotic stories, trying to be lovable, or trying to be good enough, or trying to be this, or trying to be that, trying to escape from your own suffering. That's a massive part of everybody's life, is trying to escape from a negative narrative that most people have picked up, because we live in a modern industrial society where, with the nuclear family, rather than living as a tribal group in a forest where the baby doesn't get put down for the first few years of life. In the Amazon, the child doesn't touch the ground for the first year of life. There's always someone holding the child, because they're in a group rather than in a nuclear family. And just the way we've constructed the modern world means that we don't get the sort of child rearing that has been natural for the whole of time, beyond about, maybe 2,000, maybe 4,000 years ago. It's been a very short amount of time that we've entered this sort of agricultural and then industrial type of civilization. And so, in a sense, we're trying to re-find something that we used to have. And so that's the sort of high point of mindfulness, when actually the story of our lives that we go to psychotherapy for, or even we go to spirituality for, all of that has disappeared, and there's just luminous presence in the present moment. And that's the true joy of living. And so I really wanted to make a strong distinction about this, because if you know your life calling, your becoming, if you know your life calling and you know your strength, there is a certain degree of joy that comes from doing what you're here to do. So, that's, and people's sense of well-being and sense of satisfaction is remarkably different when they're doing something that they're passionate about, and they're doing something and they're using their strengths. And people will then put more energy and more time into it. They're more likely to be successful. They communicate better because they're doing something that is really truly close to their hearts. And doing that can help us achieve objectives in life. And there is satisfaction in achieving objectives, especially when those objectives are to do with who you are, your being, who you're becoming, your identity, which is to do with your life calling, to do with your sense of self, to do with your strengths. So I'm not saying that there isn't joy in any of that, particularly when it's connected to your true sense of life calling, your sense of purpose in life, your sense of meaning in life. Viktor Frankl said there were 3 forms of meaning in life: meaning through work, meaning through love, and meaning through how we face, he said, unavoidable suffering. I would say unavoidable suffering and the beauty of living, the agony and the ecstasy of living. So that's not to say that we don't get joy through becoming, through fulfilling our potential in life, through the marriage of giving our gift to the world. But there's another joy that is more fundamental than the joy of love and the joy of giving one's gift to the world. The problem with love, of course, is that it's great when love is happening, and it's terrible when it's not happening. And by the way, folks, you all know that, as David White says in his poem, risking love even despite your sure defeat, because even if you find the perfect partner and you live together until your old age, one of you is likely to die before the other. One of you will be abandoned. My mother actually was, after my father died, cursed my father. She had mild dementia. And she said, why did he leave me? I said, Mum, he died. But for her, it was the same thing, of course. So, life does have suffering. And, as we know, that some of you may be very good at romantic relationships and be in a very steady, stable, long-term relationship. And, I bow to you. I am in a relationship, but I've been someone who I've had mixed blessings in relationships. And sometimes it feels great and sometimes it feels terrible. And even when you're giving your gift to the world, when you're fulfilling your life calling, it's easier to be resilient around the times you're successful and the times you're less successful, because you're so passionate about it anyway. If you're just doing a job because that was the job that your parents told you to get, you became a lawyer, and now they're paying you so much money you can't afford not to be a lawyer, then you find the successes and the failures more difficult. But the true place for happiness, for joy of living, is in the eternal moment, which is where there is no future and there is no past, there is just the present moment. And the metaphor that I talk about is that the joy, that achieving and becoming are a part of the journey of life, the journey of fulfilling one's potential in life. But being is about enjoying the moment. It's not a journey, it's about enjoying the moment as it is. Like a piece of music, you're not trying to get to the end of the piece of music. You want to fully enjoy that piece of music. There's no purpose in getting to the end of the piece of music. So it's such a different metaphor to the metaphor of a journey. And of course, it is also possible to journey in a way that really has a sense of presence, of being. So the achievements of life, from a being point of view, the achievements of life are flowers by the wayside. And so, but there is the possibility of being on a journey of life for fulfilling one's potential, of becoming the best that you can be, but really recognizing that all of those achievements are just about exploring nature of existence, the nature of being. Reinhold Messner, who climbed Everest without oxygen and climbed all the 8,000 meter peaks in the Himalayas, the first person to climb all of them, said that the goal was not to reach the utmost limit, but to find the place that has no boundaries. That's a quote from Tagore, but Tagore wrote it in his language, which wasn't Hindi. I can't remember what his language was. It was then translated into German, and then the book was translated into English from German. So I can't find the original source for that quotation. The goal is not to reach the utmost boundaries, but to find the place that has no limits. And in exploring one's potential in life, fulfilling one's life calling, using one's strengths, finding our unique offering to the world, learning about love, all of these things that are journeys, that feel like a journey. The goal is not to reach the utmost limit, but to find the place that has no boundaries. So in the martial art Aikido, I learned the skill of throwing people, of fighting, and then I learned how to learn, because it's a difficult art, so you have to learn how to learn. And then after about 20 years, you say, what the hell am I doing this for? You're learning about the purpose of learning. You're learning about the nature of why it is we learn. You're learning about existence itself. So all of this is just a preamble to say that there's something really deep in being, in finding and exploring and enjoying the present moment, without trying to get anywhere, without trying to achieve anything. The old Zen statements, this is it. I used to, I'm a part of a training school, where actually I'm supposedly a teacher at that school, but I really feel like I'm studying, and it's about awakening. And I used to attend these workshops called Nowhere to Go, but I had to get on a train to get there. So I had to get on a train to go nowhere, for nowhere to go. So Nowhere to Go is this mindful place where you're so trusting and interested and enjoying what's happening in this moment, and then in the next moment, and then in the next moment, that you're completely satisfied with just the experience of being alive. And you can call that the Tao. The Tao is being really present in one moment, the next, the next, the next, the next. And I know that some Christian mystics will call that the Holy Spirit as well. It's the movement of the sort of integrated being through time. And the sort of senior yogis in, for example, Tibetan Buddhist tradition will take a vow of really relying on the arising of the present moment, really trusting that everything will work out if we flow with that present moment. But for mere mortals like myself, I also need to do a job, and I need to go to the supermarket and get food. But if you could really trust in being, then somehow you'd find yourself to food, or food would find itself to you. I always think that, what would it be like in England if you took the vow of the wandering yogi, which is just to wander, the wandering yogi vows never to return to the same place. And, and somehow, in an Indian village, if you're wearing the clothes and the marks of a sadhu, someone will give you some rice. But if I think I've wandered through a village in the Cotswold begging, probably the police would get called, I'm not sure. So I suppose then you'd spend a few days without eating, but I haven't quite, and I'm not really quite suggesting that, but what I'm suggesting is that to really look, inviting you to really look deeply at being. And that for someone like me, for those of us who are spiritual practitioners, but living in cities, we're not hermits, that we can have, there are some things we need to achieve. There are some deadlines we need to meet. There are some things we need to do. It's great to explore fulfilling our potential more, and to see if we can find sources of work that have, really come from our soul, that come from our sense of calling, and that use our strengths. And at the same time, to have some time every day to just rest and enjoy the magnificence of being alive, to be a seeker after birdsong and rainfall, as David White says. And to give ourselves the space to have enough time to look in people's eyes and see the awareness that's in their eyes. Every person we meet is a miracle. I don't really understand how it all happened. How did the Big Bang happen? There's one theory that there was a big contraction, there was a big bounce, there was a contraction, and it's now exploding back out again. And what was there before that contraction? Well, there was another one. It's big bounces all the way back. It's just too big for me to understand. Or, then the swirling of, matter in the universe, and the formation of stars, and then the formation of planets circling those stars, and then, hydrogen and oxygen, 2 parts of hydrogen and 1 part of oxygen creating water on one of these rocks that's going around a star, and then out of that, complex chemicals, and then out of that, the DNA and the single cellular organism. And then, but miracle upon, amazing thing upon awesome thing upon an awesome thing. Not only was there a single cellular organism, it replicated. Imagine that. And not only did it replicate, but it specialized. Some went off to be the head, and some, you can see that I've had a lot of science education. Some went off to be the head, some went off to be the feet, some went off to be the heart, and then all of that became more and more complex. And then perhaps as an emergent property of the biology is consciousness. And then here you are. And we walk down the street, and it would be sanity if we walked down the street and looked at every person and said, wow, you're a miracle. Wow, you're a miracle. That's sanity. We've had to sort of anesthetize ourselves to it, to the amazingness of it all. I think it happens from very, very early on. When you look at a small baby, it's sort of going, wow. And then the sort of wowness sort of gets shut down. It's just almost too much stimulation, perhaps. But then can we open our eyes again and get some of that wowness? Wow. you know, when you look in a baby's eyes, it's very clear sometimes that you can almost see awareness itself. You can see consciousness. And that's why when a baby stares at you and you stare back, it's a mystical experience, or it can be a mystical experience. And it's not that much harder to do it with an adult, but we have to slow down enough because the baby's sort of not too busy in a way, that we join with the baby. But when we're with an adult who's being busy, but I'm sure we've all had moments when we've just stopped long enough, and the other person has stopped long enough to look in their eyes and just say, wow, consciousness is here. Where did this come from? What is this? There's awareness is here. And so then the magnificence of that. And again, I'm sure we've all had experiences of being in really an incredibly beautiful place in nature and just really feeling the connection with the whole of nature. And if we go to beautiful forests or lakes or oceans, sort of quite easy to get that feeling. But then just a little bit of training, we can get that with a local tree. We can take the feeling of that and then feel that with a local tree, or even, a little flower that's managed to grow out of a wall. And I think that's a part of the practice of being, is opening one's eyes again and noticing the magnificence with fresh eyes, with our baby eyes. And then that, for me, evokes joy in living. And so, in this session, we're doing an overview. In the second session, we're going to look at different practices to engage with being. In the third session, we're going to look at suffering, because if you're practicing being, then it may hurt, but you're not making a story about it. And the suffering is less, the pain is less. I was once meditating in a dentist's chair, and he got a little bit annoyed with me because I fell asleep while he was drilling, and he thought he'd given me too much anesthetic, that I was just meditating away. And so what's the difference? And I can't say I'm an expert on this, because I haven't suffered that much in terms of physical pain in my life. Praise be the Lord. But the practice would be, when I'm physically hurting, to try and be sufficiently present with it, and reduce the story that's there, to be really mindfully present with it rather than in a story about it. And we'll come to that in the third session. So now I'm just breathing for a moment to feel presence here now. And the words were coming from my mouth pretty spontaneously. I have thought a lot about these things, but so it's not, they haven't just appeared from nowhere, but they were coming pretty spontaneously. But now, as I take a deep breath, I could just be aware of my body, my guts, my stomach, my backside on the chair. I think earlier I was listening to the words coming out of my mouth. That thing when you're talking spontaneously, the words are coming out of your mouth and you hear them as they come, when they're sort of here. And I'm checking, is this useful? Is this interesting? Da, 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 da. So there's quite a lot of attention up here. But then when I take the deep breath, feel my body, I'm just being more somatic, being more present, being more conscious of the screen, which I was conscious of before, and then just noticing the sounds. So you could say that, soulfulness is body, emotion, spirit, and of course, mind. Everything's connected. Presence is when we're aware of all of this as it arises. Presence is also really paying attention to the senses. So what I see, what I hear, what I feel. And that when I do that, I start to feel joy if there isn't something troubling going on, you know. And so let's, as a sort of starting point, feel the joy of the present moment, you know, if there isn't trouble going on. Let's take that as the first level. And the faster I run, you know, I'm someone who used to pride myself with the saying, you know, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And I was one of the tough, you know, I'm a survivor. You know, I can handle I can handle everything that's been thrown my way so far. And slightly an attitude that's like a business attitude. It's a modern world attitude. You know, I'm a doctor. I can see 60 patients a day. You know, I'm not a doctor, but someone might say that. That's sort of, and in the modern world, sometimes we have to have that tough attitude, you know, but that when I go down the street to get the underground, to go and see a client or go and see a business, it's totally different if I'm just rushing to get to the underground or if I'm walking along, noticing every flower, every tree, every person, every animal, taking time to pause. Those are just very, very different ways of operating in the world. And of course, sometimes I do just rush to my destination, but more and more I'm trying to, it's much more enjoyable and pleasurable to wander rather than to rush. I was on a hiking holiday with my partner Sophie last week, and we were proud about the fact that we were walking at 1 mile. I've got an app, 1 mile per hour, you know, and some people can do 4 miles per hour. We were wanting to take in, you know, everything. We weren't in a hurry. We weren't in a rush. So for me, that's really the first principle. That's the way in. I mean, the great masters say that when you really get that presence where the past and the future have dissolved and all there is the naked awareness of the present moment, then out of that arises bliss and then compassion for the suffering of everybody who's running around with their narrative, with their story. And of course, I can, have a terrible fight in my relationship and it can seem like a hell world for a period of time. But it's not quite the same sort of hell world as, someone in Ukraine who hasn't eaten for 4 days, or, in Syria, or those people who lived in a cellar. I think it was for 3 weeks in Ukraine. Actually, we're being kept prisoner in a cellar for 3 weeks. I'm lucky. But the practice of being present, of finding the joy in just being alive, in just breathing, in just noticing the interesting way that thoughts bounce around, attention bounces around, watching how, where do thoughts come from? Have you ever tried to trace a thought back to its origin? There are rabbit holes in the brain, and a thought is basically a rabbit. This is the closest I've got. And then the thought pops out of the rabbit hole. Try and find the rabbit hole. That's my invitation to you. That if I practice really being curious about what's arising, not only will I feel joy in the moment and perhaps be compassionate as well, but also if my suffering should ever get more difficult, but maybe the practice of being will help me with that. Any questions or comments or clarifications that you want me to make at this point? Anything I've missed that you'd like to add? just the word dumbfounded seems to come to mind.
Julian, just it's Marina here. So I've got a fly buzzing around in the room.
How amazing is that? A fly buzzing around in the room. Welcome, fly.
I think the thing I struggle with, and I think other people might do some of the time, is this balance between there's all, your list of things you need to do and achieve versus being very present. And in the ideal world, I'd just float around being very present, not thinking about bills and, I need to do the decorating, or this needs thing, or work, or, so it's just a little bit difficult. I think that's probably the one. And the other thing I want to mention as well, when you're ill, like I've got fibromyalgia, which is quite acute pain. I'd be interested to know how you stay present. Do you not focus on that? Do you welcome it? So there's just two questions, really.
Well, I mean, the last one, we're going to deal with a whole session on it, so I'm not going to spend much time on it today. But actually, you have summarized the two approaches. One is dissociate, focus on something else, which is not really mindfulness, but it's what we've spent a lot of our lives doing, dissociating from something that's too painful. And, there's a slight danger that in psychotherapy we'll make disassociation a bad thing, whereas actually it can be a gift. Jim Finley, the mystic student of Thomas Merton, he said he was his father beat him by day and beat his mother by night, and his mother was devout Catholic, and he said to his mother, what shall I do? And she said, pray to God and God will protect you. And he says, I prayed to God and I found a secret place where my father could no longer hurt me anymore. He said, years later, when I became a clinical psychologist, I realized it was disassociation. He says, but who is to say that wasn't a gift from God? So the disassociations we have saved us and protected us. So that is one approach. And the other approach, which is that, can you really just go in as deeply as you can into the feeling, beyond thoughts about the feeling? And actually, there'd be a third approach. That's a sort of second approach. A third approach would be, can you be as aware as possible of everything you're experiencing? So that the location of the pain is only one of the things that you're experiencing. I would experiment with all three. I have to say, I'm not a great expert on physical pain, but I would say that those are the three approaches. I've used this. I've used both. The one of really focusing on the pain, and suddenly it becomes different when I've no longer got a story about it. I have used that, and I've also used broadening my awareness so broad that the location of the pain is just one part of my experience. We'll talk about that in the third session. The first question you had, my answer to that is, this is where we go beyond pure mindfulness, which is that, so the Buddhists say this, so in Christianity, you can say God is out there, and the mystics will say that God is everywhere and that God is in here. When it says in the Bible, the kingdom of heaven is within, that means that, God lives inside me. God's home is in me. And that, the mystics would say, is awareness itself. I just don't want to get too complicated, but just to follow the Christian thing a little bit, the Cloud of Unknowing by this monk, anonymous British monk, says that you lean into the cloud of unknowing with a dart of love towards God, and then you wait for God to penetrate through the other side. And that you have something called the cloud of forgetting, which is you forget everything you know. You forget your theology, you forget your psychology. You let go of all of that. You just lean into awareness. So in Buddhism, they would say that awareness itself is the Buddha. And that that if they take it further and they say that every nerve ending is a point of awareness, and therefore, you're full of points of awareness. Therefore, you're a Buddha field. We are Buddha fields, which I think is a sort of beautiful idea. That if you imagine awareness as light, that every nerve ending has light, has consciousness, then you're a field of light. You're a field of awareness. So if that is the true sacred, whether you call that God or whether you call that Buddha nature, then why not devote our lives to it? And to devote our lives to it, we have to deal with something that you talked about, Marina. I'm answering your question, but it's taken quite a long time, which is, they call it renunciation, which is all those things I run after in life. How important really are they? It's not we must, flagellate ourselves and give everything away. But as we begin to look at the impermanent, nature of life, I was born, I will die. After I'm dead, how much will my achievements, be remembered? How much of all the things I've rushed around in life, how much will they all be worth? Remember, it's all ephemeral. And once one gets that attitude, you say, do I need to have such a long to-do list? Do I really need so much money? When I was I'm doing much less consulting now, I'm much less training. I've got slightly bored with doing executive coaching, so I'm doing much less of it. Or there are only certain sorts of executive coaching I want to do. But I used to do a lot of it. And I used to take taxis everywhere. But actually, I don't need to take taxis, black taxis, London black taxis. I don't need to take black taxis everywhere. Actually, when I stopped, I started getting backache, and my osteopath said, Julian, you're driving everywhere in your car. If you took the tube and you carried all your files, it was in the days of paper files, with you, you'd soon have strong back muscles and abdominal muscles, and you'd be a much healthier person. So I think we can, when we say, I've got to do all these things that I need to earn a lot of money, how much money do you really need to earn? What do you really need? I mean, for me, increasingly, when you're younger, it's very, you've got kids and you want to send them to university, and you want, there are all of those expenses that you have. You want to bring your kids up well. But I'm at an age now where my expenses, I don't have a lot of things I need to spend money on. What do I want? I want time in nature. I want love. I want to spend time with people I love. I want friendship. I want, slow time. And I need to I want to jump on the plane occasion, even though it goes against my ecological ethics. It's contrary, I worry about my old habits of flying. I don't need so much money. I don't need to buy the most expensive clothes or have the most expensive things. Now, I'm not saying we should force that on ourselves, but Marina, I don't know about you. You've been a consultant, a trainer for as long as I can remember. I bet you've got tons of money packed away. Well, it depends. This thing about the consumption in the West. People say that the world is overpopulated. It's not overpopulated. If we all lived at the same standard of living of the affluent Indian farmer, we could have double the world population. It's just that the resources, we're so resource intensive here in the West. So that's a question. So over time, with mindfulness practice, don't do this cognitively. Don't say, I've got to renounce everything. That's not a very helpful thing. But if you do a practice that has you fallen in love more and more with having the time to be in the present moment, to love, to be friendship, to play with animals and people that you meet, and to be in nature, as you fall more and more in love with that, you may say, actually, I want to free up my time for this. I'll cut out some of the costs that I have that don't really, I don't need to eat in fancy restaurants. I used to, I don't cook very much. I used to eat in fancy restaurants all the time. I used to go out on my own, nice fancy restaurant, glass of wine, 3-course meal, take a book, totally happy. I don't need to do that so much anymore. I still like to eat out, but I don't need to eat out that often. So it's sort of really looking at what's the most important thing for you. So that's the thing. But we're very addicted, you know, in the West, in what's, you know, the northern, you know, the global north, as it's called, you know, the West and, you know, the highly industrialized countries, to consumption and to, you know, the what are they called? You know, the signs, you know, the symbols of success, the car, the clothes, you know, the fancy house. And some of it's nice. You know, I'm not saying we should renounce all of that, but at some point you may just say, I don't need that anymore. I don't quite need that anymore. And so, but the way to do that is to fall in love with the present moment. And the way to fall in love with the present moment is to go on dates with the present moment, to have a romantic time with the present moment. And then when you fall in love, you know, with the present moment, then you may say, actually, I'd like to spend more time here than I will do in the office. You know, how can I cut out the stuff that I don't really want to do? It's one of the reasons why, you know, I did a lot of coaching of senior executives, but a lot of the work was helping someone get their boss's job, which fair enough, but that wasn't really, after 20 years, I'd done enough of that. I don't need to do those things. I'd rather meditate or spend time with people who are soulfully fulfilling their life calling, people who are being soulful with their lives. So that's sort of the answer to that question. But the way to do that is to carve, in fact, we can talk about habits a little bit, just to carve out very small amount of time every day to be mindful. And you know, I've been reading it and I'm teaching it at the moment, the book Atomic Habits, James Clear, which I have here on my desk. You know, the way to create a habit is to create a 2-minute habit. You know, that decide that you're going to, you know, meditate for 2 minutes every day. In fact, I think he talked in one place in the book, he talks about, you know, meditating for 1 minute. You know, make a habit that's so simple that you can do it every day, or you can do it 6 days a week. 6 days a week is better than 7, so it gives you 1 day when you don't, you know, if you forget to do it, you've still kept your 6-day-a-week commitment. So it's like creating a little habits, you know. I'm doing a new habit at the moment, which is to go to the gym. But my thing is, the first habit that I'm working on is just going to the gym. It's in the park. I walk to the park. I don't even have to go into the gym. I've actually completed that habit. Of course, when I get there, if I've got time, I go in. But there's no excuse not to walk to the gym and back. So you create these little habits. So what are the little habits you can create that will give you well-being? If you say, I've got to meditate for an hour and a half a day, there'll be a lot of days when you can't do that. But if you say, actually, I get quite a buzz from 15 minutes or 10 minutes. Maybe most days I can take 10 minutes. And then when I've got time, suddenly 10 minutes becomes 20 minutes, becomes 30 minutes. And then also choosing things that are really joyful for you. Perhaps it's not sitting, but moving, Tai Chi or some yoga practice, you know, and you say, well, look, I'll leave the radio off when I do the yoga practice, and I'll do the yoga practice as a mindfulness practice. But I'll keep it really short. I'd like to do it every day, so I'll keep it really short. Once the habit is installed, then once you're there, you might do 15 minutes. I do my yoga practice in my yoga practice habit is to do 2 minutes. Often it's a lot more, you know. So I do what's called a roll down and a roll up, and you know that's the habit. And then when I've got more time, I do other things as well. So, but it may be, you know, spending time in the garden with your cup of tea at this time of year and giving yourself 5 minutes. Or sitting in front of your favorite window. Or, you know, whatever it is that gets you into that soulful present place. So you make it enjoyable. That's the first thing. Make it really enjoyable rather than a have to. What would really give you pleasure? And then make a little habit of that. and start to explore through the wins, the small behaviors that will be wins, small actions that will be big wins. That's why the book's called Atomic Habits. Create a very, very small little habit, and then that habit can grow. So yeah, any other questions? That was a good one. Thank you, Marina. You got me talking about questions. Mark.
I'm not sure if this is the right time to raise it. Just a sort of a technical question, really. You use, when you were talking, you seemed, unless I misheard, to use the terms dissociation and disassociation sort of interchangeably.
I get confused about it. Please correct me.
Well, no, I'm not correct. I'm just curious about your take on that. I mean, my understanding is disassociation is something that we consciously do, and disassociation are unconscious defense mechanisms, essentially. So we can choose to disassociate. The mindfulness, the beautiful way you described it is finding this place of witnessing. We choose to be associated with our experience, and then choose to just move ourselves to a kind of a third place where we're just watching and aware in the present moment of what's happening. And then if we practice this, then we can reach this space between the experiences, like falling between the space between the notes on the line of music. That's kind of transcendental space that you described. The beautiful thing about mindfulness is that when you realize you've achieved it, you've actually lost it, because you're aware that you're being mindful, and then you have to let that go and rest in that space between. So that's a kind of that's for me what I understand by disassociation. I think it's a word that's come in from NLP, really, because the cognitive psychologists would talk just about awareness, things that we're consciously aware of, and dissociated phenomena, things that happen, like pain is a perfect example. The participant describing fibromyalgia, pain is a dissociative phenomenon. We don't choose to be in pain. Pain just happens to visit us when it chooses to. We have no conscious access to controlling it, until we come closer to it by choosing to do some disassociating practice. So as you described, we can witness it and just become part of it and be really aware of it, and it will start to transform in that context.
Yes.
But it has to be done a bit like dealing with trauma. It has to be done just drip by drip, just second by second, just the minimum exposure that is tolerable, and then
dealing with pain.
Yeah. Just the example you use there. But I was just curious with the words. Sometimes they're used, or seen people use them interchangeably, and my own understanding that's not accurate. So I was just calling on your wisdom to see if you have a view on that.
I'm one of the people who uses them interchangeably, and so I'm very glad for the clarification you brought. Is there an echo? Yeah, that's on your system, Mark. Unfortunately, I've muted you. So Mark is Mark is clarifying that disassociation is consciously stepping back, and dissociation is when it happens unconsciously. And I would say that disassociation, when you observe what's arising in consciousness, there's a step beyond that, because there's still an observer. So there's me observing. So the sort of first stage of, perhaps not the first stage, but a sort of key stage of mindfulness is when there's an observer observing what's arising. But that's still dualistic, isn't it? There's still me and what's arising. There's a point at which, as you observe what's arising, when you're a beginner, the thoughts are so busy. When you're not just a beginner, but when you've been having a busy life, the thoughts are so busy that a little bit of attention and effort is needed to stay observing what's arising. And so there's sort of some degree of effort involved in observing what's arising. But when that observing what's arriving has become a habit, and that what's arising has calmed down, then there comes a point at which you can just let go, or I didn't say that correctly, where you find yourself relaxing a little more, and then there is no observer and observed anymore. And then that's the non-dual state. But as soon as you come back and say, oh, that's the non-dual state, of course, that you've got you observing what you're labeling the non-dual state. And that's why everything is one, is, it's sort of the non-dual state is, as soon as you name it non-dual, you're being dualistic. That's the problem with it. Because conscious thought, the conscious mind, the logical linear mind, it's beyond the conscious linear mind. The conscious linear mind makes categories, says me, says you, says this is good, this is bad, this is this is that. It's really good at categorizing, but the non-dual state is beyond that categorizing. And so that when you meditate, there may be times when just for a moment you relax and suddenly you feel this, like everything's one, it's just blissful. And then suddenly, oh, everything's one, it's blissful. The voice comes back in again, and then you've lost it. And then many, many times you repeat that, but slowly you become more familiar with that place where there's no observer anymore. So it's almost like you need to start by having an observer. You know, you need to develop the observer, the awareness of what's arising in consciousness. And then you do that for a long time, and then you start to get moments that are sort of beyond that. But this is all just sort of theoretical. The thing to do is to find practices that you just love. You know, sitting in the garden, looking at the flowers, looking at how things grow. But doing it attentively. So one of the things that's worth being aware of is that there's gross thoughts and there are subtle thoughts. And so sometimes people think, oh, I'm meditating because I'm not having the gross thoughts, but they're still quietly in these little voices talking about this. That there's this, that there can be these sort of very subtle voices, and one needs to observe those as well. But the title is Deepening the Joy of Living. It's not deepening the joy of sitting in a cushion in an ashram or a meditation room or a church. And so the invitation, what I want us to explore during these sessions is, the walking down the street, the going and getting wet in the rain, the smelling the wet grass, the becoming really interested in children and people and pets and animals and sky. Take the time that you take to go and have a cup of tea when you take a break is a potentially a moment of the sacred if you just bring your awareness to it. Another phrase that I like is one from James Finley, which is coming across a moment of the sacred unfolding. You come across moments in life where something's happening out there that really reminds you of the sacredness of it all. And it could be, the swans on the pond, or it could be two children playing in a way that touches you. Or I saw someone got knocked off their bike. I think their bicycle by a car. They weren't very hurt, but they were a bit shocked. That's what it looked like. But the attentiveness of the people who were with the man was a moment of the sacred, of strangers meeting. What else? Any other points or questions from people? What I'm going to do before I take you into a meditation is to have you go and discuss this in small groups. What I want you to talk about is what are the activities that you engage in that bring you into that sense of being? What is it that brings you into that sense of being? So we're going to do it in groups of 3 or 4. And I'll give you 15 minutes. So how was that for you? How was that sharing for you? Did you learn anything new? Did you get anything?
Well, I really enjoyed listening to what kind of turns the other people on, what's their little happy place. I found that there was quite a few things in common. But yeah, I just enjoyed kind of listening to the other people talk about their, I don't know, I just made me feel good.
Great, fantastic. Well, that's great. What were some of the happy places that they had that you enjoyed?
Oh, I enjoyed Esther talking about in her garden, she grows wildflowers, and just watching how nature changes with the seasons, how the flowers bloom and grow and different flowers come up, and how much she enjoys her garden.
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah. I enjoyed Mark was talking about all kinds of things, being close to water, that resonated with me. Just lots of reading. Yeah, just if laughter was one that another person was talking about. Yeah,
Beautiful.
those are a few of the things.
Great. I was trying to, there's a line from, I was trying to think there's a line from a song. Those are a few of the things that, is that a Mary Poppins or a Julie Andrews song?
These are a few of my favourite things.
Favorite things. Yeah, these are a few of my favorite things.
Raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens. And so it goes
That was
on.
the song, The Sound of Music.
Yeah.
Was it Sound of Music or Mary Poppins?
Sound of Music, I think.
Yeah.
Brown paper packages tied up with strings.
Great. Anything else? And then I'll run a meditation. If there are any questions or any other comments, I'll run a meditation after that. Are you getting what we're working on here? Is this obvious and good? Rena stuck her thumb up. Fran stuck her thumb up. Great. Good. Good. So, okay. Let me ask you, what are some thoughts that you would like me to develop in the meditation? Ideas or feelings?
Julian, I've got one about staying really present when you're doing things.
Great. You know you got your camera off, Marina.
I know, because I thought we're going into a meditation, and so I'm trying to sort the dog out, and I've had to plug in as well. My battery's low.
Okay, great. Angela.
I would like to hear about the connection to the body, really to feel it from inside out, kind of.
Great. Good.
Both, from outside in and inside out. Yeah.
Fantastic. Great. Welcome, Angie. Anything else?
I would also like what Angela wants. I want what she wants.
Great. Good.
I would say, like, how to fix, or when I say fix, or like really internalize those happy moments, those yeah.
I mean, for me, it's about continually returning to those moments, to presence. It's really, you have a joyful experience, and then you try to recapture the joyful experience that you had. It's sort of, it's like a couple saying, oh, we've been together for a long time. The relationship's got a bit stale. Do you remember how we were when the relationships first started? Let's go back to that. But of course, it doesn't quite work that way, does it? So what you have to do is you have to sort of, in a sense, let go of the past, the experience itself, but bring the same level of attentiveness that you brought to what's happening now. So that would be, some people here know, Steve Gilligan, but he did quite a radical thing as a therapist, which was, he said, I'll only have clients who do meditate every day. Because if you're not reinforcing what you're learning in the sessions, you've got an overly, grand view of what can be accomplished in a therapy session. I need you to reinforce this every day. But recently he's been saying, I want you to meditate 50 times a day. So continually whenever we think of it, coming back to presence. Coming back, what is happening now? What's happening now? What's happening now? Those of you who dance, who do 5 rhythms or other activity like that, will know that particularly when you're breathing, you're breathing aerobically, and you're moving. If you stay with what you're present with, which, for example, could be anger or sadness, it actually doesn't stay for long when you're breathing with something, really present, breathing with it, the feeling doesn't stay that long. It's only when we've suppressed it or avoiding it that it stays for 50 years. I mean, I remember going on a course when I was about 50, and I was still angry with something that happened when I was 5. I hadn't breathed into it, whereas I've learned to breathe into things. So continually coming back to the present moment, that's what I would say. But let's do that in a meditation, Kimberly. Thanks for the suggestion. Okay, so I like it if some people keep their cameras on, but some people like to turn their cameras off. So a mix of the two can be good. The reason why it supports me when we have the camera on is because then I'm tuning into people rather than talking to, a blank screen. I can feel that I'm tuning into what's going on, and I find that helpful. And some people also like to move and stand and move. So whether you sit or you stand and move, it's totally up to you. And I would like to start with what Angela was talking about, which is feeling from outside in and from inside out. Let's start really right into the body. Let's start with that. Actually, I've changed my mind, and I'll tell you why. I'm going to start with the eyes and the ears. When we will spend time on the body, but the reason I've changed my mind is because if we're in a garden, or if we're on a bus, or if we're on a beach, or if we're in a public place, being able to be mindful and present with our eyes open is a useful thing. So many of you have your eyes closed, and that's fine, because you've got the color of your eyelids, the darkness of your eyelids, but also the light and the detail of the light. Sometimes I want to do a little bit of research on what do people see on their eyelids when their eyes are closed. Do they see the same as me? I see the pink of blood vessels. I see all sorts of other little things moving. I don't give too much information about what I see, because you may see something different. So what is there? It's not just the darkness of the eyelids. There's other stuff there as well. And then also there may be images in your mind's eye. And again, it's interesting to notice whether it's lots of still images, or if it's a single still image, or lots of still images, or a movie, whether it's color or black and white, whether you're looking at it, or whether you're inside the movie. Lots of things to notice in your mind's eye. And then with your ears, I do love my ritual of listening outside of the window, outside the room, outside the house. And again, I can hear silence. I listen for silence. I can hear the vastness of space. I can listen for house sounds. I can listen for sounds in the room. And of course, you can hear my voice in the room through your computer. And then I listen for inner dialogue. And then disassociating, listening to the inner dialogue rather than being it. And being curious and interested and compassionate about the inner dialogue, but just not being too involved in it. It's natural for thoughts to rise, yet we don't have to think about the thoughts. We can watch them from a distance, listen to them from a distance with curiosity and interest, but not engaging with them. And then might be just interesting to notice if you smell anything. Perhaps not, but smell is a very good way of getting present, particularly in new places or gardens. And then let's come down into the body. There are so many different ways of approaching feeling the body. Sometimes I increase my awe at everything that goes on in my body by feeling the tips of my toes and the crown of my skull, my scalp. And then just imagining there's a whole galaxy of stars between the tips of my toes and the muscles of my skull. But if I pay attention to the muscles of my skull, it's not something I do very often. I don't know about you. Sometimes I imagine my skull, but what if you feel that layer of muscle and skin that is over your skull? I'm not sure it's possible to feel the skull itself, but we can feel the sensation of the scalp pressing onto the skull. And I could spend a long time just exploring the sensations of the scalp, the muscles and the skin, and how they wrap around the bone down into my face. But I also find it really helpful to pay attention to physical sensations that are a very long way from my thinking. So now I'm saying, oh, the skin on my toes. And if I wiggle my toes, the feeling of the muscle. I don't know whether you're wearing socks or not, but there may be different sensations on the skin of your toes. So then the feeling of the muscle. And as I wiggle my toes, I can feel how the tendons create feelings in my feet as well. So I'm becoming aware of my feet. Some people, when they're feeling, make visual images of what they're feeling. Some people they can imagine their feet as they wiggle their toes. But what would it be like to let go of the image and feel it from the inside? if you pay attention to the feeling from the inside, it may not feel like, it may not have the shape of a toe or a foot. Letting go of any image, just trying to experience. And there are different sensations in different places in my foot. How easy would it be to move my center, my attention, right down into my foot? I notice that I'm having thoughts about my feet. And gently letting go of those. I try to go to pure sensation. Perhaps moving your feet helps. I find that if I move very, very, very slowly, I become very interested in how, if I lift my toes, it begins to lift the soles of my feet. And then I can feel it lifting in my ankles. And I can feel it in my calves. And either side of my calf bones into my knee. And then into my leg. In fact, if I really pull my toes up, I can feel it in my pelvis. It all works together in a single unit. And I can relax if I want to. And just pay attention to the way my backside presses into the ceiling. Or if I'm standing, how my backside helps hold me. The muscles that wrap around the backside. If I'm sitting, it's quite a nice feeling of my backside supported through the chair to the ground. And my legs like the two other legs of a tripod. And somehow there's sensation, as in obvious feeling of skin and muscle. But particularly in the trunk of my body, in the viscera, my pelvis, There's a sort of subtle feeling that one could call energy. Can I feel the energetic quality, the subtle sensations, the lower part of my body? If we can just relax a little, it's like being attentive, but not trying too hard. Can you relax into the lusciousness of the feeling, the easygoing of the feeling? So we're not trying to do anything, we're noticing what is. It could be really fun to spend a lot of time exploring every little sensation of the body. I like to lie on the floor and roll around. I notice as I settle down that there's a little bodily tension, a little bit of a buzz or a fizz, which, if I stayed here for a while, would just quieten down. It's already quietening down, softening, quietening down, relaxing. And I'm not trying to change anything. So I notice tension in my neck and my shoulders, but I'm just with it. I'm just allowing it. And from this feeling of enjoyable presence, perhaps you'd like to wonder about the possible activities that bring this feeling of luscious presence in your life. To let images, memories come to mind of activities that bring luscious presence. And perhaps wondering how you could have more of these moments, more activities, more times of luscious presence. Some which might be familiar to you. More of what's familiar. And perhaps more of what's unfamiliar. Trying new things. Exploring. If you sit quietly a lot, maybe you'd enjoy wandering down the street in presence. if you look at the ground and the flowers and the grass, maybe it would be enjoyable to lie on your back and look at the sky, or to stare out of the window upwards into the sky. If you explore presence a lot on your own, maybe it would be fun to explore it with other people. To get really present in conversation with a friend and find out how it impacts them. Find out what happens. Get really present with somebody that you've never met before, who's serving you in a shop or a restaurant. Just as an experiment. And wouldn't it be wonderful to deepen the thought that throughout the day we can stop for a short amount of time and notice, bring awareness, bring attention, bring presence. I wonder what life would be like if each of us noticed presence. 6 times an hour. Each of us spontaneously and naturally fell into presence. 6 times an hour. The circadian rhythm is the rhythm of awake and asleep. But there's another rhythm called, I think, the Ultradian rhythm, which is about every 45 minutes. We need a break. We take a break. About every 45 minutes, we stare out of the window, or we get a cup of tea, or we take a breath, or we look at social media. But what if we were to notice the natural moments of conscious attentiveness to a task or an action, and the natural moments where we soften into more somatic, mindful presence, and go with that flow? Actually, I can't quite remember if the Ultradian rhythm is every 45 minutes or every 1 hour and a half. And it doesn't really matter, because that's just a thought. And what's important and interesting to notice is those moments where you just want to relax and become present, to let yourself go with that flow for whatever time it takes, following the natural flow of task orientation and presence orientation. And wouldn't it be great if we found that it was natural for us many times a day just to stop and witness the miracle of being alive. The glory of having a body, of the sensations of being a body. And what if awareness itself? Awareness is like a mirror. All the thoughts and the phenomena of life, the things we see and hear and feel, arise like reflections in the mirror. But awareness itself, the mirror, never changes. The reflections in the mirror don't change the mirror. So what if we not only paid attention to what arises, what appears, what's present, but also became really curious, even more curious about the place where all of this arises. Attention jumps around, paying attention to whatever it's interested in, like a spotlight. Behind that is the field of awareness in which everything arises, which is luminous. Isn't it interesting to just explore this? To do our favorite activities that give us this feeling of connectedness, of relaxation, of the flow from moment to moment. To the awesomeness of being alive. To the excitement of the great adventure of consciousness. Maybe the universe created consciousness so that it could be aware of itself. So that it could reflect on itself. What would it be like if we treated each moment as a sacred arising? And that we remembered this 6 times an hour. In a natural and easy way, so that our enjoyment, comfort, familiarity, pleasure, and comfort in knowing that it's always here whenever we want it. It's always here for us. Always. And when you're ready, just reorientate yourself back to the field of the group, turning on your cameras and just seeing this miraculous meeting that's meeting in some other world of some other space and time through the medium of our computers. Yet we can feel each other's presence. We can see each other's presence. And I'd like all of you to unmute yourselves and just say a word or a phrase about how you're feeling right now.
Luscious.
Peaceful.
Serene.
Grounded.
I feel lighter.
Peaceful.
Awake.
You're on mute, Marija.
Relaxed and peaceful.
Did we hear from you, Esther?
Excited.
Excited. Has anyone else not spoken?
Angela's just woken.
I didn't want to come out of my state, but here I am.
Well, really lovely having you here today.
You.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you,
Bye.
Julian.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed this smaller group. Thank you, Julian.
Sorry, you enjoyed the smaller group.
The smaller group, yeah.
Beautiful. Good.
Mhm.
Take care.